Thank you very much. And greetings to the members of the resistance and to Madame Rajvi. Congratulations on the amazing virtual rally held on Friday. Thank you for including me in this event. I was asked 9 years ago by a law firm to look at the MEK and study them and the NCRI. They were requested by one of the members of the Organization of Iranian American Communities to help get this group off of the American terrorism list. I'm not a lobbyist, but I'm very interested in the Middle East, and so I studied this issue. I went to the first rally that I went to in 2011. Speakers who spoke at the 2011 rally from America were criticized in the American press, and many allegations were cited about the MEK and the NCRI, that they had done many bad things. But I studied these allegations, and I was looking for the most credible sources of what was the truth behind the allegations. And I found that in the Western press and the think tanks, the allegations were not supported by the most credible evidence. So I prepared an independent report, which was given to all of the senior officials in the US government, including the Secretary of State and members of Congress. And then I became very interested in the deeper story. I wanted to know the history of this group, the MEK. And once again, the more I looked, the more I found that the story of this group, the true story of the MEK, has been erased. It has been entirely misrepresented. The MEK, I learned, was advocating democracy and freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, and a practice of Islam that was consistent with modern life, and not to follow a grotesque abuse of religious faith to support political tyranny. Ayatollah Khomeini wanted Masoud Rajavi's support for his new constitution in 1979, but Mr. Rajavi refused to accept Valiat Ifaki. Ayatollah Khomeini sent his forces, his guns, into the street to kill his own citizens. Just as Bashar al-Assad did in 2011 in Syria, there was a UN ceasefire in place by the time of the MEK's Operation Eternal Light in 1988. It is very striking to me that the regime repeats this falsehood to try and portray the PMOI as traitors to their own country, rather than as steadfast defenders of the Iranian people's rights and their sovereignty. Similarly, allegations that the MEK was a cult were promoted by Iran's Ministry of Intelligence as part of its demonization campaign. There were many more falsehoods amplified by the Western media and analysts. So in 2013, I wrote a brief 50-year summary of this untold story with the help of the University of Baltimore and Professor Sheehan. And part of the story, as you know, is what was done to these brave people. As you see, regrettably, 7 years after this book came out, in 2020, Western media and think tank reports still repeat the allegations that were entirely debunked officially by court challenges in France, the European Union, the UK, and the United States years ago. Why do they keep repeating these allegations, these falsehoods? My conclusion is the same. No matter what the regime does, the reason is the same. Why are they seeking to discredit the NCRI and the MEK? Why did they rush to defend Bashar al-Assad's regime in 2011 against the Syrian people? Why did they enter into a long negotiation with Europe and United States and the P5+1 to try to talk about nuclear weapons, to keep the US and Europe from acting against the regime? The reason is always the same reason: to keep a weak, illegitimate regime in power. So 1 year ago, I wrote a monograph explaining in detail the politics and the heritage of this movement. It's called The Ayatollahs and the MEK, Iran's Crumbling Influence Operation. This was an attempt to show why the MEK is misunderstood, how they championed the legacy, as you heard from Madame Rajavi today, of Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. I wanted to make it impossible for respected analysts and journalists in the West to repeat the same old falsehoods. Unfortunately, we have not succeeded yet in making them stop saying these things. But in the West, where I am sitting, news reports are saying the same old false, discredited things about the MEK. Why are they doing this? The resistance has consistently advocated free elections since the 1979 revolution. Mrs. Rajavi has never failed, from what I have heard, to point out that the NCRI's goal is to give sovereignty back to the people of Iran, not to seize power themselves. On just Friday, 2 days ago, this is what Madame Rajavi said. She said that we, the people of Iran, and the Iranian resistance will build a free and democratic Iran. She pledged the commitment to remain faithful to our people's sovereignty and their vote, not seek power at any cost, but to establish freedom and justice at any cost, and never return to the dictatorships of the Shah and the mullahs. And as the majority of elected lawmakers in the United States and Europe have pointed out, quote, we want to establish a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Iran. Is there any other resistance group advocating universal democratic values in Iran? Is there any other resistance group standing for gender equality against a brutal and corrupt regime 100% controlled by men? Is there any other resistance group that is capable of organizing a worldwide virtual meeting with thousands of people in over 100 countries? You'll recognize that picture. That's a remarkable sight. The world has never seen anything like that. The regime sees these events, and they know the NCRI and the MEK more than anyone else are fully capable of organizing a democratic transition to legitimate constitutional government after the fall of the regime. Just today, ladies and gentlemen, during Madame Rajavi's remarks, the news came over the media from a lawyer for the 3 young Iranian men facing a death sentence that their executions have been halted and they will have a new trial. This news came after a social media campaign that grew around the world. Can anyone point to another resistance group that stood up for the lives of these young Iranian men? Of course not. There is none. My friends, 9 years ago, I felt that Americans who've met with the NCRI and the MEK and who spoke at their events faced a lot of pressure and a lot of criticism. The group was on terrorism lists around the world. Today, I believe the tables have turned. As we say in America, the shoe is on the other foot. The Iranian diplomat, Asadollah Assadi, is facing charges of terrorism in a Belgian court. His plot to bomb the NCRI rally in Villepinte in 2018 involved Iranian embassies in several countries. How many journalists have asked Foreign Minister Zarif to explain why he is using diplomatic privileges to support terrorism? Why authorities in Denmark, France, Belgium, Germany, Austria, and Albania have all encountered state-sponsored Iranian terror activity on their soil in the past 2 years. And for those who may not be aware, I have said this many times, no member of the MEK or NCRI has ever been prosecuted and convicted of terrorism in a democratic country with an independent judiciary observing the rule of law. So now, when I read Western news reports of Friday's virtual rally, and the Twitter criticisms that tried to prevent anyone from mentioning the resistance, it is the reporters and the analysts whose motives must now be questioned. Are they on Tehran's payroll? Are their relatives being threatened back home? Are they agents of the regime following the 80-20 tactic? I'm sure you know what the 80-20 tactic is. You should criticize the regime 80% of the time, but make sure that 20% you criticize the NCRI and MEK so it looks more authentic and credible. Yes, it's a different world, ladies and gentlemen. I know what the facts are. The NCRI's critics are trapped in a web of propaganda and falsehoods. As a former American official who deeply believes we need to know the truth about all these matters, I urge you to keep challenging the world media to tell the truth. Because, my friends, the truth about this regime is now available for the whole world to see at Ashraf 3, with the personal testimony of brave survivors and detailed evidence on display. I am confident that the truth will come out, and when it does, the truth will set Iran free. Thank you for inviting me to join in your commemoration today, and I pledge to seek justice for the crimes of the leading regime figures in Iran. When the truth is finally acknowledged, justice will be done. And when justice is done, Iran will be free. Thank you.